She wanted to spend those 2 weeks doing nothing but giving dana to the Sangha. But what did Uttarā do at that point? You see, this is a perfect example of a real disciple of the Buddha. Something miraculous happened. Something out of the ordinary. She didn't have any anger within her. Anger is won only through loving kindness. Every day, practice loving kindness over and over and over again. There's never too much of loving kindness in the world. There's not enough of loving kindness in the world. There's only one thing to do, and that's to just let love and to just let go. Namo Buddhaya. Dear meritorious friends, if there was any power in the world that you could have, what would it be? Whether it's flying in the air or maybe even being invisible, there is nothing more powerful in the world than loving kindness. The protection that loving kindness gives to our life, it's limitless. The perfect example of that is the story of Uttarā. She was a true disciple of the Supreme Buddha. In the days where the Buddha still lived, that daughter Uttarā was given off. She was married to a person who wasn't of the Buddhist faith. So she went far away and lived with her husband, but he didn't have any faith in the Buddha. So after 2 weeks, she was full of it. She didn't like living there. Why? Because she couldn't give dana anymore. She couldn't see monks or nuns anymore. She couldn't even listen to a Dhamma sermon anymore. She was fed up. She sent a letter to her father and asked, "Father, oh, why did you send me to a place like this? I don't even get to listen to a sermon anymore. I don't even get to see a monk or nun anymore." So after the father read that letter, he felt sad. So what he did was, he sent a letter back, and he sent 50,000 golden coins with a plan. He said, "Okay, look, this is what you should do. You should, with the money I gave you, you should spend that money on a woman called Sirimā. She lives there in Rajagaha. Spend that money on her." So this Sirimā is a courtesan. So she should spend money on her to support her husband, to take care of her husband. And she should spend the rest of the money to her husband. And so that way, her husband will let her go, let her be free for 2 weeks. And you should spend the rest of that money on your meritorious works, to spend a chance on doing good deeds, on doing merit. So that's what she did. She took that money and got Sirimā to come to the mansion, to the palace. And so then when her husband saw Sirimā, he readily accepted. Why? Because Sirimā was that beautiful. And so Sirimā was given 1,000 coins a day to look after the husband, while Uttarā went off to do whatever she wished. And what did she wish to do in her free time? She's not like us. She didn't go out and she didn't want to watch movies. She didn't want to go and play around and hang around and be free from her husband. What did she want to do as a true disciple of the Buddha? She wanted to spend those 2 weeks doing nothing but giving dana to the Sangha. And so that's what she did. With her servants, she went and looked after everything. She made dana, she would sweep the place, she would look after the servants, she would be sweating here and there and everywhere. She would be running here, there and everywhere. And so throughout 2 weeks, she was listening to Dhamma and giving dana. She was so happy. Think about it. In those days, the Buddha was around and the Arahants were alive. How much happy might she have been giving dana to the Sangha giving dana to arahants. So 2 weeks went by. And who was watching this? Her husband, at the top of the tower. He was watching what Uttarā was doing. He saw how she was sweating and running around here and there. He laughed to himself. Why? Because he's not a Buddhist. He laughed to himself and said, I can't believe this Uttarā. She's running around here and there. She has so much money. She could just live happily, just relaxing. Why is she spending her time and effort just for those monks? So he laughed. And so who saw him laughing? Sirimā. So Sirimā saw that the husband was laughing at Uttarā. He was looking down at Uttarā. So at that point, Sirimā forgot that she was just there for money. She forgot at that moment that she was just there to do service for 2 weeks. She actually thought, because 2 weeks went by, right? She thought that she was the real wife. So at that point, she got this big amount of jealousy aroused in her. And so she forgot that she wasn't the real wife, that Uttarā was the real one. So what did she do? She ran downstairs. And so at that point, Uttarā and servants were making dana at that time. So what did Sirimā do? She took a big ladle, a big spoon of oil, and started running towards who? To Uttarā. Dear meritorious friends, at that moment, there was a big distance between Sirimā and Uttarā. At that point, Uttarā had the chance to tell her friends, her servants, to grab a hold of Sirimā. But did she do that? No. She had a chance to run away or to even fight back. But what did Uttarā do at that point? You see, this is a perfect example of a real disciple of the Buddha. What did she do? She practiced what she learned, and that was loving kindness. She practiced the Dhamma. When Sirimā was coming at her with burning oil, she stood rigid. At that point, she stood firm and thought to herself, for the past 2 weeks, I was able to give dana, I was able to listen to the Dhamma. I got this opportunity because of no one else. The reason was because of this person right standing in front of me, Sirimā. So did she get upset at that point? No. She spread nothing but loving kindness. It's because of you that I was able to do these meritorious activities. And so at that point, she spread loving kindness so powerful. So much so that when Sirimā poured that burning oil on her head, something miraculous happened. Something out of the ordinary. She didn't get burned. You see, that's the power of practicing this Dhamma. That's the power of practicing loving kindness. You see, throughout samsara, throughout the journey of life and death, Uttarā has been practicing the Dhamma. That's why she got a chance to be born in the Buddhist dispensation, to listen to the Dhamma. And you see, the Buddha explains that a person who always practices loving kindness, just like a person who drives a vehicle for a long time, they get used to it. In the same way, someone who gets used to practicing loving kindness, there are 11 benefits to practicing loving kindness. And one of them is that you can't get burned by fire or by weapons. So Uttarā used the Dhamma to protect herself. Sirimā at that point was shocked. She was so shocked that it didn't burn her. So she took another spoon of oil and came at her. But at that point it was too late. The servants came and pulled her down, and they started beating her and beating her. You would think that Uttarā would let them beat her. No. The amazing thing is that Uttarā came and stopped them. That's not just all. She went and treated Sirimā's wounds. She bathed her in hot water, and she treated all her wounds, and even put oil on her wombs. And Sirimā was just so shocked at this incident. She thought to herself, how amazing. This Uttarā had all the chance in the world to escape from my attack. She could have had her servants beat me to death. She didn't have any anger within her. She got scared at that point. Sirimā got scared at that point. She thought to herself, I made a terrible mistake. I messed with someone who is a supreme person. So she went and begged for forgiveness from Uttarā. But Uttarā said, you can't get forgiveness from me. You have to get forgiveness from my father. Who is your father? Isn't he Punna? No, not my father in Sangsara. Not my father that I was born from. But rather, my father who is disenchanted with the world. My father who has escaped from Sangsara. That is the supreme person of beings. The Tathagata, the Buddha, he is my father. You have to ask for forgiveness from the Buddha. And so what did she do the next day? Uttarā and Sirimā both went to the Buddha the next day and explained what happened. At that point was when the Buddha said this beautiful gatha, these beautiful verses. So the meaning of that verse is this: anger is won only through loving kindness. An evil person is won over through a good person. Stinginess is won through giving, through generosity. False speech is overcome through lies? No, false speech is overcome through truthfulness, and only by truthfulness. So this is why we always invite you to practice loving kindness. Every day, practice loving kindness over and over and over again. There's never too much of loving kindness in the world. There's not enough of loving kindness in the world. You shouldn't get enough. You shouldn't be fed up of practicing loving kindness. No. Your life should be filled of loving kindness. For Uttarā to display this much amount of loving kindness, how much have she had practiced throughout Sangsara? You see, the thing is, for us to do such a thing, it requires us to practice loving kindness in the past. Uttarā was able to show that power of loving kindness because she practiced in the past. So, in the same way, if we too want to get the benefits of loving kindness, if we want to truly protect our life and our next lives through loving kindness, there's only one thing to do, and that's to just let love and to just let go. Namo Buddhaya.